Hello guys, it's Chowmaster100 here. Bakugan Armors is a series not a lot of people know about, and that's for a couple reasons. First up, it was only in Japan. Second, it was very short-lived, only having a few releases, and with that, it kind of ends up making this kind of a lost Bakugan series. Based on this being a Japan-only series, you might immediately make the connection to BakuTech, and that is true. This was effectively meant to be a successor to BakuTech. While it doesn't have the BakuTech name, Bakugan Armors does carry over a lot of different aspects of BakuTech and kind of keeps the same idea alive. In a lot of ways, it was almost like a third line of BakuTech, but they really tried to reinvent the wheel with this one. Explaining what Bakugan Armors is an interesting question. Like BakuTech, it was produced by Sega Toys, and is meant to be a much more physical version of Bakugan, of course focusing on, well, the physical Bakugan themselves, having different pieces that make them change how they work. But unlike them, they also do have some extra abilities of sorts that really change up how they play, and puts a bigger emphasis on things like G-Power battles, which BakuTech didn't see as much of. But of course, to explain Bakugan Armors, I think there is a very easy way to start. So the system of Bakugan Armors definitely shares similarities to BakuTech, but again, it's much different. So first up here we have kind of the core here. It looks kind of awkward, but it is what it is. Aside from just being kind of a physical piece that's quite small, it does give the G-Power, so that's pretty nice. This one, of course, being 750 as an example. But you can add more pieces to it. Of course, we have things like soul pieces. These actually are different molds than the ones from BakuTech, but the same idea applies. You kind of have these rubber pieces on the core here, and these just kind of peg in without any real trouble. And with that, yeah, they just kind of work, and that's all there is to it. Fairly straightforward, again, very similar to BakuTech. However, we now have some different pieces. Now, instead of something like cross pieces or the bind system, we opt for smaller detachable pieces, this time arms. So this time we have the attribute arm. This determines the Bakugan's attribute, and again, it gives kind of different physical attributes to the Bakugan. This one, of course, having kind of a metal blade, so it can be a bit better for attack physically. And the skill arm. I'll be going over these throughout the video, but each skill arm gives a Bakugan a different skill when it opens, so that's important to keep in mind. Again, we will go over these as the video goes on, after we go through each individual Bakugan. But that's basically how the system works. It's fairly straightforward, again. Definitely an emphasis on physical design. Maybe a little bit less so than some of the later BakuTech, but still it is there. But now you do have skill arms to kind of change up battles, so it is definitely a different approach on something like BakuTech, which is nice. And it's just its own system, which, again, makes it fun to check out and learn about. Starting off with Rekka Hiryu, here's its card, as each Bakugan Armors Bakugan does come with its own card. So moving on to the Bakugan itself, here it is. So right here you can see it has some pretty nice detailing on it, of course, like most Japanese Bakugan do. Let's go ahead and open this up. It does have a few manual parts as well. Of course, the feet come out as you'd expect of soul pieces. And also it does have horns that you can flip up as well. So this Bakugan is 750 Gs, however there is also a 730 G variant. Of course it is Pyrus, and now we get to its ability, plus 100. So how plus 100 works is that after you stand the Bakugan and get into a G-Power battle, you then get to automatically add 100 Gs to this thing. Of course, after that you get your gate card bonus, so you effectively just get to have an extra 100 Gs, so in this case it'd be 850 Gs. This ability is fairly straightforward. And it kind of makes sense as the starting Bakugan for Bakugan Armors. Now we have Shippu Zeku, here's its card. Moving on to the Bakugan itself. Fairly nice in terms of detailing, as you'd expect. Opening it up, doesn't have any normal manual parts outside of its soul pieces, and these are metal, so every Bakugan Armors Bakugan does have some metal on it. I pointed out towards the beginning of the video that Rekka Hiryu did have, metal blades. This one has metal soul pieces. In terms of G power, this is actually the weakest Bakugan Armors Bakugan. This one's 740 Gs, but its lowest is 730 Gs, so either one, it's the only one to not get to at least 750 Gs for its max. It's also a Ventus Bakugan, and of course, its ability plus Wind. So plus Wind is a fairly interesting ability. So after you stand your Bakugan, you get your gate card bonus. You then get to add the Ventus gate card bonus on top of your original one. So you get 2 gate card bonuses. So if you're using Shippu Zeku in stock like this, you simply get the Ventus gate bonus twice, but if you were to use a different attribute arm and, mix and match, you'd then get whatever attribute you use, say Darkest, and then also Ventus. So it can add some versatility. If you hit on both your bonuses, that's nice, but at the very least, you do get more attribute coverage out of it. Moving on to Hado Kaio. Here's its gate card. Moving on to the Bakugan itself. Also looks very, very nice. I like the gold on this one. And yes, it does also have metal soul pieces as well. So, opening this one up, fairly small, and of course it does have the soul pieces that need to pop out. So, anyway, this thing is 750 Gs, also has a 730 G variant, and it's Aquas, and now we get to the ability, which is by far the, well, one of the 2 most interesting. It definitely, these 2 are, again, by far the most interesting, but yeah, this is one of them. That is Blow Away. So, Blow Away is something. How this works is when you stand your Bakugan and your opponent also has a Bakugan somewhere on the field, it doesn't have to be on your gate card, it could be on a different gate card, doesn't matter how long it's been standing, you can take that, you can tell your opponent to take their Bakugan and remove it from the field. So you can simply just free up space on the field without any consequence. This can be very effective for removing larger occupancy Bakugan off the field, so this is a pretty broken ability, all things considered, since you could just move it from any card as long as you're standing. You don't have to engage in any kind of G-Power battle, it simply activates once you stand, so again, this ability is very, very powerful. Our next Bakugan is Ogon Houoh. Here's its card. Moving on to the actual Bakugan itself. Again, looks quite nice. Opening it up. Has its soul pieces as manual parts, and these are plastic, unlike the last couple. You can see the attribute arm and skill arm both have large metal wings here. The G power on this one's interesting. So it is 720 Gs, so it is lower than average. However, it does have a maximum of 760, which is higher than average. Of course, it's a Chaos Bakugan, and its skill arm is plus light. This works very, very similarly to plus wind. You get a second gate bonus, that being Chaos. So again, in this case, you just get the Chaos bonus twice. But if you were to mix and match attribute arms, say use, the Pyrus attribute arm, you then get Pyrus and Chaos. So again, if you hit on both, you get a lot of G power. But if nothing else, you simply get some extra type coverage, which is quite nice. Now we have Koppa Kudaku. Here's its card. Moving on to the actual Bakugan itself. Has a pretty unique color scheme for Subterra. Of course, opting for a nice dark green. Kind of wish they would have went with this for normal Subterra in general, but here we are. Opening it up. Opens up like that. And it's a smaller looking Bakugan. And this one actually is a very, very unique Armors Bakugan. You might notice it doesn't have any soul pieces, nor does it have any manual parts. So its armor pieces actually take the place of soul parts. However, if you were to take off the arms, you'll notice that there is actually a spot for soul pieces, so if you mix and match different arms, you will have to use a foot on it, but they still do have the compatibility there, which is very, very nice. So this Bakugan is 730Gs, does have a 750G variant as well. As I mentioned a little bit ago, it is Subterra, and its ability is O-Raid. I mentioned there are two Bakugan with very interesting abilities. This is our other one here. So when you stand a Bakugan using O-Raid, you may pick up the Bakugan and the gate card it is stood on, and you can then move the whole card with the Bakugan on it to a different area. You have to match up the four sides with another card, again on the sides, so adjacently, and you can then place it next to that card. So you can move it to the other side of the field if you want to, you can move it behind another card if you want to, potentially with another Bakugan on it. You have a lot of versatility with it, so again, it is a very dynamic ability compared to a lot of these other ones that are more G-power based, so it is nice to see that they were thinking about abilities that would alter the field as O-Raid does. And now we have Yasha Tagaras. Here's its card. Moving on to the actual Bakugan itself. Already, I think it looks very, very nice. Opening it up, we have the metal soul pieces. And this one actually has quite a few manual parts as well. You have these little extra parts here that pop out. And also these parts lift up as well. So a fairly dynamic Bakugan in that regard. Anyway, the G-power on this one is of particular note because it is 770Gs. There is a lower version of 710Gs, which is the lowest Armors Bakugan possible. But this one, not only is 770 the highest base Armors G-power possible, but it's actually also the highest G-power ever printed in Japan. Yeah, for the first generation of Bakugan with G-power, this is the highest one they ever got in Japan. Also, it is Darkus, and now we get to its skill arm. This one's also a very interesting part of the Bakugan. Here's why. It's called Free Select. Free Select allows you to get a second gate bonus, similar to things like plus light or plus wind. However, with this one, you simply get to choose which bonus you want. You might think that that's a little bit confusing. Why would you want to use, plus light or plus wind? This one allows you to just choose a second bonus. What's the point of those? And there kind of isn't one. This one just inherently outclasses it. Yeah, this one entirely just is better. You can choose to use, Darkus, so basically just, getting the same bonus twice. You could kind of choose something else to cover your attributes. Again, say Pyrus if you want Pyrus and Darkus bonuses, or you can choose, of course, the highest one, which would make the most sense. Pretend that's Aquas, go Aquas. You could also use things like Ventus or Chaos, kind of just completely outclassing plus light and plus wind. It is extremely versatile, and that is why this thing is just kind of known to be the best G-Power battler combined with its 770G base G-Power, so yeah, it's a very powerful G-Power battler. Really the best one you could have in terms of stock Bakugan. This thing is pretty special in that regard. This is Ikki Tosen. Unlike the other Armors Bakugan, it does not come with its own card, nor does it have any metal pieces. It's just this. For the most part, aside from a bit of printing, it's also just translucent yellow, so what's so special about this thing? Let's go ahead and check it out. Opens up like this, and right off the bat, it looks kind of mid. Has some manual parts. Of course, you can take out the plastic sole pieces. Also, there is a manual part on the head. This part up here can be pulled up. And there you go. There is the Bakugan actually fully opened. In terms of G-Power, might be hard to see on the translucent background, but it is 750 Gs. Unlike the other Armors Bakugan, this is static. There are no variants. It's simply just this. It's also Chaos, so another Chaos Bakugan. Another, I guess, option for an attribute arm for Chaos. And there's a skill arm, ×2. What does this do? Well, you can simply multiply your gate bonus twice, so in this case it's Chaos, so you just get Chaos twice. If you use it on anything else, say Subterra, you get the Subterra bonus twice. It's similar to Plus Light and Plus Wind in the fact that it is outclassed by Free Select, so with that, despite all the hype around this thing, and the fact that it's kind of just a special Bakugan, it's actually very uninteresting. Honestly, it doesn't even look all that cool. Looks okay, I guess, but yeah, it's a bit anticlimactic for what it actually is. The next question is simply, what happened to Bakugan Armors? You might be wondering, is that everything? And yeah, that's it. There's only 7 Bakugan in the line. It's a very small line. Now, I have a couple theories on what could have happened, but let me just tell you right now, we don't actually know what happened to the series. I'm sure only Sega Toys knows. We don't know if there's a second wave planned, although it was very likely. But here are my 2 cents on what I think happened. First up, they went back to the Bakugan name. Of course, BakuTech kind of separated itself, being more so known as, well, BakuTech. This went back to just Bakugan. For those who don't know, Bakugan generally struggled in Japan. BakuTech did kind of better, but still wasn't the most popular thing ever, and I think going back to the Bakugan name was a misstep. I think they should have called this BakuTech Armors, but again, that might not be the biggest piece of evidence, just changing the name back to Bakugan, but the bigger piece of evidence is simply that Bakugan had kind of run its course in Japan, I feel. It of course started in 2007 with Battle Brawlers in Japan, and then that kind of died out, and then they didn't come back till 2010 with New Astroya. And then in the summer we did get BakuTech, and then of course BakuTech just kind of ran as a side thing throughout the rest of 2010 and all of 2011 when Gundalian Invaders was going on. And then in early 2012, they shifted gears, they opted to can Actinium Surge, go all in on BakuTech after it had already been going for, well, close to 2 years at that point. And they turned it into the main thing that ran from 2012 to early 2013. Then we got BakuTech Gachi from early 2013 to early 2014, and then of course we got Bakugan Armors in spring of 2014. That is the problem in my mind. Bakugan had just been going on a while. And BakuTech itself had also been going on quite a long time, so getting a successor to BakuTech, it wasn't exactly something people were probably looking for at this point. Again, it was an older idea, and I think BakuTech Gachi was already starting to fall off a bit. I don't recall people really talking about BakuTech as much by the time Gachi came around. It just seemed like it had run its natural course, and that's probably all there really was to it. It just didn't sell well. These first Bakugan from Bakugan Armors probably just didn't stick quite well, and they just opted to can the whole thing. That's my assumption anyway, but again, we'll probably never know the real answer for sure. Bakugan Armors has a very complicated legacy. It's something that really in a lot of ways doesn't have much of a legacy. It was something that, again, a lot of people just ignored or don't know about. There are a couple notable things about it, though. First up, I mean, it is notorious nowadays for being very expensive. All these things are hard to come by now, and some of them are very, very rare. However, there's one other interesting thing about Bakugan Armors, and that is, it's actually the final thing from the first generation of Bakugan, yeah. While Bakugan here ended early in 2012, it was still going in Japan, as I mentioned earlier, throughout 2013, and this was in 2014, so Spring 2014 was really the end of Gen 1, even though that was, well, over 2 years after it ended for us. So it does have that going for it. Aside from that, again, the legacy itself is just kind of the fact that it is obscure and not a lot of people know about it. I do wish this would have continued further. I would like to see other abilities, maybe a reroll ability where you miss, you could reroll, or even if you stand, you could maybe risk trying to reroll again if you don't like your position. Maybe some kind of arm or break ability where you can maybe neutralize other armors' abilities, maybe have some kind of wheel for it towards like a 50-50 shot or something. I think there's a lot of things you could do with this, and I think it was a really, really cool idea. There's definitely a lot to it, but again, it was just kind of squandered by being this weird, obscure series that didn't really get a whole lot of releases. And that's really all there is to say about Bakugan Armors. It was kind of just this obscure series I mentioned that ran its course, even though that course was very short. And that was really all there was to it. Like I said, would have been nice to see more ideas and abilities. This idea had a lot of room for growth. There's a lot of things they could have done with the armors concept, especially with armor abilities. They could have made a whole line, probably more seasons on this thing. It had a ton of potential, but again, they just opted to not. I guess poor sales or something else happened, and well, we didn't get anything else, which is really unfortunate because I do think this could have been a great line of Bakugan, but this is all we have to show for it, and it's honestly just unfortunate. I did want to talk about it anyway, though, because again, I do think it's something that gets overlooked, and it was a very, very cool part of Bakugan's history. But with that, I think that's really all there is to say about it. You can only go on so long about 7 Bakugan. So with all that said, I think that's about everything for this video, so anyways, thanks for watching, and bye-bye.